Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm on my way to the post office to mail out actually two knives today, one that I'm loaning to a buddy and one that I just traded. And as I was hopping in the car, I figured it would be a good time to shoot a quick video about something that I get asked about a lot, whether it be usually just kind of in direct messages, either on Instagram or Facebook. I sell and trade and buy a lot of knives online. In fact, I would say it's almost more common, probably definitely more common for me to buy knives or trade for knives on the secondary market than it is for me to buy knives from retailers. That's a separate discussion. I do also have preferences when buying from retailers as to who I buy from and why. Spoiler alert, my favorites are River's Edge Cutlery, definitely number one. Second, probably like Knife Joy, some great guys over there. Anyways, that's another conversation. But talking about the secondary market in terms of buying, selling, and trading knives, because I think a lot of people, when they're getting into the hobby, they know that exists, and they hear some people like myself talk about it a lot, but figuring out how to navigate it can be a little bit tricky, especially because there's multiple platforms. So the first thing I usually tell people when they ask, where should I list my knife that I'm trying to sell, or where should I go to buy the knife that I'm looking for when they want it secondary, is I give them three options, and they're the three that I use almost exclusively. The first one is Instagram. Because I'm super active on Instagram, I post there daily, I have a decent following, I follow a lot of other people, I'm engaged with people on there. It's generally fairly easy for me to sell a knife on Instagram as long as it's a desirable knife. What I'll do usually first is I'll just throw it up in my stories. That way, the people who follow me the closest, who are the most engaged with me, are usually the people who watch my stories, and then they can see that knife is for sale. If it's something that they want, then they'll shoot me a direct message. I'll always put my price there, sell value and trade value. Usually they're at least very close. I try not to be that guy who puts trade values at double what sale value is. I don't really understand that. But sometimes, like say I've got a knife for sale for $300, trade value might be $325 because I'd prefer to sell. So if I trade, I'd rather trade up a little bit, and I want to make that clear that I'm the one in control here. This is my knife I'm offering. If you make me a trade offer, I'd like it to be a little bit juicy because I'd prefer to take cash for it. So sometimes that also makes sense because trade value will be the actual full value of my knife and sale value will be a little bit less than what I paid. So there's kind of a game to be played there. But nonetheless, always put the sale value and trade value regardless of where you're posting. I always like to make sure that the pictures I'm posting of the knife are very clear, show the details, all that kind of stuff. So Instagram stories is usually my number one. The second place that I'll usually post it would be maybe an actual Instagram post where I can use hashtags that relate to the sale of a knife. Instagram has been pretty harsh on those hashtags as of late, so hashtag knife sale no longer exists. You can't use that hashtag. So there's things like NAF sales and just weird kind of more niche ways to post them, knives for sale, stuff like that. So if you use those hashtags that people look at to see what knives are for sale, then not only will I hopefully reach more people than I would in my stories by actually getting to my audience, if you will, but also people who search those hashtags will then see that post. So very common for me to move a knife pretty quickly that way. The second thing that I'll do is use Facebook groups. I'm in a number of Facebook groups, quite a few actually. Some of them are very niche, some of them are just for people who are into knives in general. But the number one place on Facebook, in my experience, to buy, sell, or trade a knife is Knife Trading and Sales Feedback. I think I've got that name right. Knife Trading and Sales Feedback. I'm almost positive is exactly what it's called. But it's a group specifically dedicated to those purposes. So if you're a first-time seller on there, it can be a little bit difficult. On any platform, a lot of people will want to ask you for vouches, especially if they don't know you, haven't seen you in the community for long. So be prepared that if you haven't sold a knife before and it's your first time, you may need to like send the knife first or something. But work within your own compass of reason on that kind of thing. And yeah, so on there, every day there's a thread of what's for sale today, and everyone will just comment what they've got for sale. They'll put a picture, they'll put their values, and then if you want it, you shoot them a direct message. I usually comment on their post saying, hey, I shot you a DM, because sometimes message requests on Facebook are funky. You don't really notice them unless someone tells you that it's there. But yeah, so there's a plethora of knives, hundreds of comments every day of people posting what they've got for sale. Some people will have the same item that they're putting every day for weeks on end because no one's biting on it. And if they're patient enough to play that game, that's fine. But for me, if it doesn't sell within that first day or two of me putting it on Instagram and on Facebook in a group like that, then I will probably turn to Reddit. Now, Reddit is a platform that I never even went on for anything until I got into trading and buying and selling knives. There is a thread on Reddit called Knife Swap. Knife Swap is where you want to go if you're looking to move a knife, buy a knife, whatever it may be, selling, trading, buying, knife related on Reddit. That's the spot. So the way, pardon me, the way that platform works, Reddit is a different animal from social media, but Knife Swap is essentially a thread, or almost like a forum, if you will, of only knives for sale or trade. So what you do is you create a post. If it's your first time, again, you might have a little difficulty because you won't have any seller flair, as they call it on there, or trader flair or anything. You'll just be kind of unproven. So keep that in mind if it's your first time. But the more knives you sell or trade on there, the easier it gets, the more trusted you are. Kind of like an eBay seller. Like if you've got good credentials behind you, then it is easier. You appear trustworthy. Anyways, on Reddit, you create a post. The way that you have to create a post on there is by using photos on Imgur, I-M-G-U-R. So be prepared for that as well. You'll have to create a link to that Imgur with all the photos. You'll have to have the knife open with a timestamp. So you have to write on an index card, piece of paper, whatever you want, your handle on the platform, the time and date that you're posting it, so that they can tell it's actually you. That's their way of verifying that you actually have this knife for sale, it's in your possession. That has to have the blade open. Then you want to have a bunch of pictures. In my opinion, kind of the more the better. Like I like to have at least about 10 photos of the knife for people to peruse through if they're interested in it. So you want to show the knife from different angles. You want to show it opened and closed. You're going to want to show any spots that there is any kind of defect, because the last thing that you want when selling a knife is for someone to receive it and for them to find damage that you didn't disclose. That's a quick way to build a terrible name for yourself in an actually pretty small, tight-knit community. So you're going to want to show all the details of the knife. In the written portion of that post, you're going to want to give it a grade. On Reddit, you have to grade the knives. They have a system on there, and so read that system. It's better if you're gonna sell it, read their actual document on it. But essentially, you'll grade it like an A or a B or a C. Most knives that I list on there are usually something like a B plus, because they've been carried, but they haven't been torn apart and they're in great condition. They're still wearing the factory edge, that kind of thing. Whereas if it's a knife that's been like modified, it's definitely at least a C or lower. Yeah, if it's been sharpened, there's criteria for that. So a knife that would be an A is a brand new in box knife, and it goes down from there. So you'll have to be very honest and very realistic about how you grade that knife. You're going to want to do a little bit of research before you post it on what a realistic price to be asking for the knife is, because if you post a knife that's worth $300 and that's kind of the going rate on it, and you're asking $450 for it, you're going to get torn apart, and then it's going to be really hard to kind of salvage your reputation after that. Especially I find Reddit, there's a lot of kind of price policing, and some people love that about it, other people hate it. Yeah, that's a separate conversation altogether, in terms of price police and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so generally speaking, if I have a knife for sale, the first thing I want to do is put it in my Instagram stories, because my favorite way to sell a knife is to somebody who I already have somewhat of a relationship with. Is that a requirement for me? No, I sell knives all the time, or make trades all the time, or buy all the time from people that I've never met before. Now, there are some things certainly to look for. If somebody has a profile that has like no pictures on it, or none of the pictures are even knife related, and they don't seem to be a part of the community, you don't share any followers or anything like that, then that's usually a very big red flag for me. I will not be trusting of a person who doesn't seem like they're in the hobby, who's offering me something that's a kind of niche offering. Like, people who aren't knife guys aren't going to offer you an Olamic Wayfarer, because people who aren't knife guys don't know that the brand Olamic exists. It's just it's not really a thing in my experience for those types of people to have niche knives. So if they're offering you a Benchmade Griptilian, maybe, possibly, but I'd still be wary of getting ripped off, scammed, something like that. Up to this date and time, I have still never been scammed on a knife purchase. I've never been hosed on a knife sale. And there's all kinds of ways to kind of navigate that. But I'm certainly not an expert on it, so I struggle to say like, this is what you need to do to make sure you never get ripped off, etc. But some certain things that you can do to protect against that are just quickly look at the person's profile, who you're dealing with, find out if they look legit. Don't be a judgmental a-hole and assume because of their race or gender or whatever it is that they can't have that knife or sell it to you. But just try to see whether they're actually engaged in the hobby. If they're engaging with other people like you, if they're posting content that's knife related consistently and it looks like it's being made by them, then that's a good sign. The second thing is, if you're using PayPal, you can use goods and services. That means that the person who is selling the knife that you're sending the money to, that means a certain percentage comes out of their cut of the money. And so platforms like Reddit, you can only use PayPal goods and services, and your prices that you list have to reflect total what the buyer sends. So it's an understanding that you're going to take I think it's like 3.5% cut out of the money. So if you list your knife for $275 shipped, that means you're covering shipping and you're covering the fees on PayPal. They're sending you $275 from them on PayPal goods and services, and you end up with like $264 or whatever that amount would be, minus 3.5%. So keep that in mind. If I'm dealing with somebody that I know well, that is a friend of mine, I'm sending PayPal friends and family every single time, because I already know them, I already have a relationship with them. That way I cover the fees. I just prefer to do that. It makes it simpler, smoother, and there's less of a, yeah, that's just my preference. But if I don't know the person, absolutely, you better believe I'm using PayPal GNS, because if they happen to just never send me that knife, or they want to play games and take forever to do it and start being sketchy about it, then I'm going to message them and say cancel it, and I'm going to contact PayPal and get my money back. Because if you pay GNS, you can get your money back, you can be refunded, you can actually make a claim. If you pay friends and family, none of that works. You can't get that money back no matter what. You have said, I trust the person I'm sending this to. PayPal says, good, it's done. That's it. So keep that in mind. A lot of people these days, I'm seeing more and more people in the community are getting away from PayPal, because PayPal can be pretty restrictive. They can like ban people's accounts because someone put in the comments, thanks for the knife, dude, and PayPal doesn't want you buying knives. So if you put notes on PayPal, be careful is all I'm gonna say. If someone's sending me money and they put thanks for the knife, dude, I'm gonna be pretty pissed, because you shouldn't do that on PayPal. But more and more people are going to like Venmo and alternatives. I have PayPal and Venmo just in case. I find those are the big two, and I'll use either of those interchangeably. It doesn't make a difference to me which one the seller wants the money to come from. But yeah, so the ways to vet people would be, check them out. And if you have friends in common, ask your friends real quick, hey, have you dealt with this guy before? If you're on like a Facebook group where they seem pretty active, it's totally fine in my book to make a post in that group and say, hey, I'm about to do a deal with so-and-so. Can anybody vouch for him? And at the same time, can people vouch for me too? And you can tag the people who you've done deals with, and then they can vouch for you real quick. That's super easy, super simple, doesn't take that long. And then once you've each got 4 or 5 people vouching for you, then it's much easier to deal with confidence and just jump right into it and not worry. The next thing I would say is, when you are selling a knife, be the kind of person who takes a couple of extra steps to ensure that the knife is arriving to the person in as good of condition as it can, and that you're protecting the package. So something I always do, I'm gonna show you the back side of this so it doesn't show anyone's address, mine or the receiver's, but you'll notice, I don't know if you can see the little bit of glare on here, there's tape around all these edges. So everywhere that there is a seam on this box is double taped. Every corner, every crevice, everything is wrapped really well in tape. So the only way that you can open this box is with something sharp to get through the tape. So this knife is not gonna, or this box is not gonna blow apart in transit and come out of the box. And so always, always, always just use a bunch of tape. It's the cheapest insurance you can buy. Speaking of insurance, unless the knife is a cheap budget knife, I always just insure it. It's a couple of bucks on me, the sender, to insure it. But if this knife somehow gets lost in transit, luckily, I've never had something like that happen. I've had a few times where the knife gets delayed a couple of days and I'm real worried that it's going to have an issue. If you've insured it, then you're safe, because the last thing I want to have happen is for me to send a $500 knife to somebody and then it never makes it, and then I have to refund that person because they never got that knife. It's not fair for them to be out the 500 bucks. So I've got to refund them as the seller, and then I have no knife to sell to come up with that 500 bucks. I just got to shell out the 500 bucks. That would suck. So at least by insuring the package, that's now USPS's problem financially, not mine anymore. So a little bit of insurance is tape. All the insurance is just to actually insure it. It's literally not very expensive at all. If you're sending in a flat rate box, like I almost always do, it comes with 50 bucks built into the program here. And then say I'm insuring this for $300 total, which happens to be how much this is going to be insured for. It's gonna be like, instead of the $8.50 to send this or whatever, it might be like $12.50. So at the end of the day, that $4 is worth it to me in difference in shipping cost to make sure that I'm covered, because I'd be the one who's out that money if it didn't make it. So those are some things you can do to the packaging itself. If you're sending something weird and funky that doesn't fit in a flat rate box, or maybe you send UPS or FedEx or whatever it is, just make sure that you're building practices in for yourself to make sure that it's going to get there in as perfect shape as it possibly can. Both of these packages that I'm sending right now have the knife securely in their original packaging, and then they are packed to the brim with a bunch of crumpled, like thick parchment paper is usually what I use, or I'll just use pages from a magazine or whatever like thicker paper material I have around. I will crumple up and I will mash it in all around the thing so that when you shake this, there's no movement in here. This knife can't burst out by getting its own momentum inside of the box. This thing feels like one solid brick. So that's super helpful. Just do that kind of stuff, because it makes a difference too when you're receiving a knife. There are a lot of people in the community who I've dealt with multiple times now, who I like to buy from, like to sell to, like to trade with, because I know every time I receive a package from them, I can get exactly what I'm promised, and it's gonna look presentable, it's gonna look nice. The original packaging isn't gonna be all beat up because it was banging around inside of its own box the whole time. It's gonna be in the quality that it was in the pictures that I received before getting it. So that's important to me. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess this isn't the most like, here are the steps. I've kind of gone off on a few tangents. But yeah, my favorite 3 platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. Instagram is pretty broad. You're just kind of shooting it out to an audience. So is Reddit in a way, although I find they're very different audiences. And then Facebook can be kind of targeted. Sometimes I'll sell on Facebook, like I'm in a number of specifically Spyderco groups. And so if I'm selling a Spyderco and it's a sprint run that is worth more because it hasn't been available for a while or whatever it may be, the first place that I'm going to want to sell a kind of specialized knife like that is to the best audience for it. So I'll list it in a Spyderco group full of people who are looking for that kind of thing before I'll list a knife like that on Instagram or Reddit, because the odds of me finding the right buyer who wants it and is willing to just shell out the money right then, make it super fast and easy so that I can go to the post office that same day and shoot it out and have the money in my account, that's the best case as a seller. My best method of getting that done is to go to where that person most likely is. So that's just sales, I guess. Let's think, is there anything else? Yeah, specialized Facebook groups are awesome. There are a bunch of groups on Facebook. I'm only in a small fraction of them, I'm sure, but if you want to sell Microtex, you want to sell Hinderers, you want to sell Chris Reeve knives, you want to sell Spydercos, you want to sell Reats, whatever it is, I'm sure there are certain groups for each of those. In fact, when I wanted to buy a Koenig not too long ago, the first place I looked was the Koenig Buy, Sell, and Trade group. Now, it happened to be at a time where the market was pretty slim on Koenigs and there weren't a lot out there, so I ended up finding mine by messaging a friend of mine on Instagram. But the first place that you should look when you're looking for a specialty knife like that is probably the group where knives like that are designed to be bought, traded, and sold. So I guess my point on picking where you're going to sell a knife is just think about where the buyer is going to be. Or if you're looking to buy a knife, think about where the seller is going to be. It's really that simple. And for me, having each of my kind of methods of selling, those three main platforms, I'm able to tailor my approach so that I rarely have trouble moving a knife. Sometimes I'll have to take a little less than I was hoping to get for a knife. That just depends on the market more than anything though, or on how much of a rush I'm in to sell it. Sometimes I'll list something pretty low on my stories and it'll be gone in 10 minutes and someone will be stoked because they got a good deal. And for me, that's fun because I'm just moving it super quick, super easy, and it's the fastest, simplest way for me to list it, and it takes virtually no work on my part, and I've moved the thing. But if I want to do it and I want it to go fast, usually I have to take a little bit of a hit compared to what I paid. So it's all this kind of game you play, and you can have your own tolerances as to how much you're willing to lose, as to how much you're willing to gain, because some knives do go up in value. You might struggle internally with paying $160 for a Spyderco, and then never carrying it for a year, and then all of a sudden asking $300 for it, because that seems like, why should I be able to almost double what I made on that knife? It depends where you fall on that line. I happen to like knives that appreciate in value. I look at it like any tangible good. Certain things appreciate in value, and when that happens, it's very rare. Most tangible things in the world depreciate over time. The bulk of goods just go down in value the longer that they're out, and they become antiquated and whatever it may be. But there are certain things, rare cases, where things go up in value, and that can be very cool. By kind of tracking what I buy and when I buy it, I try to be very careful to not lose money on knives. Like I said, there are times when I want to move something quick. I'm chasing something that I want to get right now, so I need the money in my account, and I'll take that hit where I need to. But usually, if I buy correctly, and a lot of the time that depends on me buying on the secondary, so that somebody else has already taken the hit when they've bought something brand new that they found out they just weren't keen on. If I buy the right time, right place, for the right amount, then I'll know if I don't like this knife, then in a week after I've experienced it, checked it out, and made that decision, I can resell it for every dollar that I have into it, and I haven't lost anything. Then I'm just playing with the same money over and over again, and that's really fun for me. So if you can get good at understanding where to list your items for sale, how to list them so that they're buyable and look good, and you appear trustworthy, and you can build a reputation for actually being trustworthy, then all of that stuff will help you to sell with power. And then if you can also look for trends of understanding how to actually determine what the real going value of a knife is, searching what they've been going for online before you go to buy one, because the last thing you want to do is find a knife that you get real excited about and you buy in the moment, and you find out you overpaid 50 bucks for it because you just didn't know how much they've been going for. Sometimes it's a game of waiting people out. If somebody has a knife that I really want and they've got it listed for sale for 300 bucks, and I know they've been going for a little less than that, but that's the only one available right now, That guy might have to sit for a couple of days on it, and I have to take the risk that someone else might overpay for it. But if I wait a couple of days, then that guy's going to come down a little bit on his value, and then I can buy it for exactly what I think it's worth. So there's all kinds of games you can play in it, but I guess this was a really, really long way to explain that for all the people who feel like asking me or other people that they see doing what I do in the knife community with moving a lot of knives, whether it's buying, selling, or trading, the best methods, in my opinion, to get that done are to use Instagram, Facebook groups, and Reddit. Each of them have fairly different audiences with quite a bit of overlap, and if you're choosy about where you list, how you list, when you list, then you can get pretty good at moving things quickly and not sitting on pieces that you wish would have sold a week ago for way too long. So just be smart about it and be intelligent and be the kind of seller that people want to buy from, be the kind of buyer that people want to sell to. It's really that simple. You don't have to overthink it. It's not rocket science. Just be a stand-up person who's honest, who sends the money when they say they're going to send the money. Don't make people wait. Don't make people hold stuff for a long time if you're capable of just buying it. Just be a good person in the community. The coolest thing to me, one of the coolest things about the knife community is the culture behind it. And there's a huge push for honesty. There are a lot of places where people get screwed, and unfortunately that does happen in the knife community, but it's kind of a rarity in my experience. And when it happens, the knife community tends to be pretty good at making sure that whoever did that is incapable of doing it again. Scammer's gonna scam, right? There will be people who try to take advantage, but in general, in my experience, the bulk of people who are in the knife community understand that they're being held to a standard by the community itself. And so most people are pretty good at staying within the confines of making good deals. Certainly there are exceptions, and I hope it doesn't happen to me ever. It's a fear of mine that I'll just be out a whole bunch of money on a knife deal one of these days. So I really hope that doesn't happen. But so far I've had great experiences, great luck, and I've been able to flourish in this community and have a lot of fun because of my ability to move pieces. Part of the way that I collect is not to actually have a giant collection all at once. I don't have a massive disposable income to throw into the hobby to just buy a bunch of stuff and hoard it. A lot of the way that I experience knives is by having a knife for a little while, enjoying it, carrying it a little bit, but keeping it in excellent condition, and then reselling it. And if I bought it at the right price, I can not lose money by doing that. And then I can just move that kind of block of money that I had sitting in that knife, liquidate it real quick, and throw it into the next thing I want to experience. Or sometimes it splits and it goes into two things I want to experience, and I can sell both of those. And sometimes if I play it just right and I'm buying the right stuff low and selling a little bit higher, I can even build that amount a little bit. Tiny bit here, tiny bit there, tiny bit here, tiny bit there, and all of a sudden the knife that I originally bought for $150 and sold for $175, which I bought another knife for $175 and then got $185 out of, and then I traded that for a knife that was worth $225, and then I sold that for $215 and I took a hit. And like, if I do that kind of stuff enough and I edge my way up slowly but surely, then that original $175 my money investment that I put into a knife becomes a $350 knife that I really like and wanted and almost was a grail for me or something like that. So if you play your cards right, you can really kind of maneuver, but knowledge is power, I guess. So it just takes experience and understanding. I think it was somewhat helpful for me that I spent a big, massive part of my adult life in sales. Not that you have to be a salesman to sell in the knife community. There's not really like salesmanship to it, but just understanding like timing of when to list things, how to list things, how to make them look presentable. If you're taking terribly lit, pixelated, bad photos of your knife, I don't want to buy it because I don't trust that it's in good condition. I can't actually see the condition. Just present things the right way and present them at the right time to the right audience, and then the rest will take care of itself. People will want to buy the right thing at the right price. The knife community, people are always looking to buy stuff. So present it right and it'll happen for you. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, that's the answer. This turned into a half hour of me rambling about it. So hopefully there's some kernels of information in here that will help those of you who are looking to buy, sell, and trade more, or who haven't done it yet and are looking to get into it. Those of you who struggled and have knives sitting for longer than you want to before they sell, hopefully this will help you, because you may just be pushing it to the wrong audience. And if you get it in front of the right eyes, then all of a sudden it'll sell like that. So I guess that'll be that. This has been quite the fun rant. I guess I've been at the post office for a while now, just sitting here, and you're watching people go by me. So you're welcome for the killer views. All right, thanks guys.